Okay, let me go ahead and start the demonstration. And it is, you are only scheduled till 7:30, so if you can't stay, you'll have to watch the rest of this on your own outside of the class, because I'm going to be demonstrating some new techniques to do this assignment. Okay, so let me go ahead and I also want to show you scanning. Does anyone have a scanner at home?
No, I don't have one.
Well, that's okay. You don't have to use a scanner, but I do like to show about scanning so that if you're hired in an industry where you need to use a scanner, that you get comfortable with scanning and various techniques around scanning in Photoshop. So I wanted to show you that. So let's see. I brought some images in to work with to combine. So I'm going to open up some of the images I brought. Sometimes I do this assignment around Halloween, so these are kind of my Halloween images. I'm gonna just open, but this can be an all year round project as well. So I'm gonna open in Photoshop the images that I brought to work with. Okay, so I got a bat. It's a cute bat. And I got this environment. Not this one. This one I'm going to show you about selecting intricate imagery for next time. This is the one I want to work with for my environment. So I'm going to command click to open them both together. Okay, so for once you find your image that's going to be your environment, you want to test it out first. So let me just show you how to test it out to make sure it's high enough resolution. So for one thing, when you're downloading an image, check the pixel dimension. So let me check this one. So I'm going to go to image size. And so this image is over 1,000 pixels wide and over 2,000 pixels tall. So you want an image when you're searching for images, check what the dimensions are in pixels. It's not gonna be a good idea to choose an image that's just like 100, like 3 digits in dimensions going either way. It should be over 1,000 for both the dimensions. And let's just check the resolution. So the resolution happens to be set at 150 pixels per inch, but I want to uncheck resample because resampling means that you're going to be adding or subtracting pixels. I don't want to do that. I just want to change the resolution without changing the number of pixels so that I'm working with the original image size rather than altering it artificially. So I'm just going to uncheck resample and I'm going to see how big in inches this image would be if I change the resolution to a print quality resolution like 300, because right now the image is just too big. It's 11 by 17. It's too big for if I wanted to print on a letter size sheet of 8.5 by 11. So, I mean, it's great for tabloid size paper, but most of us have printers that are going to just print the 8.5 by 11 size. So let's, if we have a printer, that's just the standard. So let's just change the resolution to 300. and then you can see how it reduces the image, the image in inches. So now it's gonna definitely fit in an 8.5 by 11. It's well, actually not exactly. Will it? Oh wait, yeah. The height would be the 11 length. It will be 8.75 by 5. So I could go with 300, or I could go with 220, and it'll still fit. Let's see if I try 300, and then I say okay, and it doesn't actually change the size of the image. And another way to test is to go File and Print, and see a print dialog, and so this is set up for the printer that I have hooked up to the computer. Because this image is taller than it is wide, I want to orient my paper to match that. So my paper is landscape right now. I want it to be set up for portrait. So I choose portrait. Then it's going to fit. The image is going to fit better in there. So so that's good. So we're looking at, if you click on print settings, you want to check that your paper size is set to US letter, and then that gives you something to test how your image would look like printed. So if you choose an image that's too small and you set the resolution without resampling to 300 or 220, then you can verify to see how large that's going to look on the paper. So this looks pretty good. It's got it's reasonably filling up the space. But if you have an image that ends up like this, that's not reasonable. We're not going to be able to see the details well enough in an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and you don't want to have, this is a ridiculous amount of room for the size of the border, so that's not going to work. So I'm going to say cancel that. If I go back, let's see, if I go back to my image size, and I change the resolution to 20, it's changing the way the image looks in inches here. It doesn't change the pixels in dimension. I'm going to say okay there, and then go File, Print. See how now it fills up the space a lot more? If you have an image that's too big, you could either scale it down with image size, or you could just check scale to fit, and it'll reduce the size so that nothing will get cropped off the edges. But I think I'm going to go back to the 300. So I'm going to go back to image size, and change the resolution without resampling to 300. If you find an image that you just can't find anywhere else, and you absolutely have to resample, that's a way to make an image larger, is to check resample, and then I would do it in small increments. You can increase the width or increase the height. You could also resample by going down, and that's ideal. If your image is too big, you can check resample, and you can, while the width and the height are linked together, that's good so that you don't distort the image. Then you can change the size. See, if I let's say I brought the 8 down smaller to 7. See, then that's actually changing the number of pixels. If I go back to, like, go down to 5, that's changing the number of pixels. So I don't want to make my image smaller because that's lowering the resolution because now the image is too small. And ideally, you don't want to have to increase. You don't want to have to resample by increasing in size because that's going to artificially have the application add pixels to the image and do some guesswork, and it's going to cause your image to be grainy and lose resolution. So it's best if you find an image that's larger than what you need than to find an image that's smaller and then have to resample by increasing the size. I'm going to cancel out of this and I'm just going to go image size, and not resample. I'm just going to make it 300 for resolution and say okay. So when I go file print, I can get an idea of how it will look when it prints. So maybe my image is, it's good, it's filling up the space, but maybe it's a little too narrow. So what I can do is a trick to widen my image, which I'm going to show you. So let me just show you this trick. So let's say I just want to add a little width to my canvas size, not my image, because I don't want to distort my image and make my image wider and look stretched. So I'm not going to do this in image size. I'm going to do this in canvas size. So I'm going to go image, canvas size, and then I'm going to say, okay, let me just change this to inches so I can see what this is in inches. So the width may be a little narrow, so maybe I want the width to be, instead of 5.7, maybe I want it to be, let's try 7. So I change the width to 7, and I can have the width just go to one side or another, or I can have width on both sides. I'm going to have width on both sides, and it's going to be using the background color as the color that it adds to extend width. So I'm going to say okay. Okay, so then let me just see how that will look when I go file print. So that will fill the space and give me more width. And then, and you could also decide if it's too much, you can always use the crop tool and be on ratio, and I can crop in a little bit. Maybe that was a little too much width, and then I just click the check mark to apply that. Okay, so now I have it as the width that I want. Now I want to fill this green with the content, the background of the image, so it looks like there's not green on the sides, but the image is extending out this wide. And so one way is to use the clone stamp tool, but that'll take forever. And there's a quick way to do this. So here's the quick way. You take the rectangle tool, and I'm just gonna make a selection just inside. I'm going to leave kind of an edge of pixels on the outside on either side of this image when I draw out this selection. So I'm just drawing just inside. I'm clicking and dragging. I'm using the marquee, rectangular marquee tool, clicking and dragging, and I'm just leaving a sliver of pixels on either side hanging outside of my marching ants. And then I'm going to go to select and inverse select so that the selection is selecting outside of the image. And then what I want to do is I want to fill the green area with what we call content aware. So Photoshop is basically going to analyze the edge that's within this marching ant selection, and then extend it. So you could do that by pressing, if I press delete on this locked layer, then it'll automatically ask me, well, what do you want to fill the deletion with? So if I click delete, then it'll bring up fill options and I'll be able to choose content aware. But if you're on a layer that's not a locked background, then that won't happen. So in that case, you would go to edit and choose fill to get to the fill options. And there they are, the fill options and content. For contents, I want to use content aware. So that means it's going to analyze this edge of pixels and just extend it out. Okay, so I want content aware. I guess color adaptation is fine, checked. Blending mode is, have it at normal, and opacity, I'm going to keep it at 100. I'm going to say okay. Okay, it's thinking. Hopefully it's not crashing. Oh no. There it is, thinking. Alright, pretty cool, huh? So I'm going to hit Command D. And so it looks pretty good. It just seamlessly extended the image wider.
Oh yeah, it looks nice.
Yeah. So now I have the background, the size that I want to work with, and then I can build a bat creature. So it's I've got this image, another image I want to scan. So when you come back from break, let's take 10 minutes. In 1 minute from now, here, let me just get my camera set up here. So let's just round up and say it's 7:45 now, and let's come back in 10 minutes to 7:55.
Okay.
Okay. Let's stop. So I want to share my screen. And I want to well, I'm not going to save this quite yet. So actually maybe I won't share my screen just yet because I want to have my video come up so that you can see what I'm doing here. So so here's my scan. I got my scanner here, and I found this image in a magazine, and I'm gonna scan this to make this turn this child into a bat child, or a winged character. This child is already in flight here with this as a skateboarder, but now I'm gonna transform him, I think it's a he, into a bat character. See how that goes. So I'm gonna scan this, and can have it scan. I guess I'll do it this way, even though this is probably upside down. And I'm going to do this, I'm going to scan this on purpose, so not straight, so that I can show you in Photoshop some techniques on how to straighten your image once it's scanned. So I'm going to put this here, hold this down, and I'm gonna bring up my scanner. So now I'll probably share my screen. Share. Okay, so I'm gonna bring up my scanner from preferences, printers and scanners, and I'm gonna choose my scanner, open scanner. Waiting for scanner. Okay, so here are the options for scanning. I want to make it not a flatbed image, so not a positive or a negative. I want to use color, not black and white, and this is not scanning text. Millions of colors is good. The resolution I want to set to at least 300 for actual size. If I wanted to double the size of this image, I could go double 300, I could go 600 or triple, etc. If you have an image that's really small, you can enlarge it without losing the resolution by scanning at a much higher resolution. But I'm interested in keeping the image at its actual size, so I'm going to choose 300 dots per inch, and then choose where this image is going to go. So I'm going to choose other, so I can choose where I want it to go to my folder for this class. I'll just guess it can go in project 3 and choose. And then I'll name this. This is a skateboarder, and I have him upside down right now, but that's okay. I can turn him right side up. Or I'll just call him a skater. And the format, I can choose PNG or TIFF. TIFF is probably even better, but PNG is good too, of the formats here for high quality image. But TIFF is definitely going to be an uncompressed image, or give you that option. And it's giving you options for image correction right within the scanner. But I'm going to leave those options alone and just choose, I'm going to choose TIFF here. And then you can draw out the area that you want to scan. So I can click and drag, and this is how most scanners work, just around the area that I want to scan. But I purposely put this image in not straight, so I want to get this straight edge in there, because that will help Photoshop to figure out how to straighten this image, to have this straight edge in there. Of course, for my purposes, I don't really need to worry about straightening the image, because in the end, he's going to be a flying character. But I just wanted to show you how to do that. So we'll see if this works. So I'm just going to click on Scan now. When you put a new image, you choose Overview, and then it reads the new image. But let's see if this scans it. Okay, so now if I go to my folder for the class, project 3, I should have that skater TIFF there. So there it is. So I want to open it in Photoshop. File, open. And skater. So I'm opening it, and I could flip it around. If I go to image and I choose image rotation, maybe 180. Let's see. There we go. That's more like it. And then let's say I wanted to straighten this automatically. Let's see if this works. If you go to File, Automate. So it's File, Automate, and then Crop and Straighten Photos. If you put in your photo a little crooked in your scanner, this sometimes works really nicely. Sometimes it doesn't. Okay, it did a pretty good job. So it figured out, it makes a calculation based on analyzing kind of the straight edges of the image, and then it rotates everything and crops it for you. So it did a pretty good job. Another way to do this is to set your own straight edge. You can use the ruler tool, which is hiding under the eyedropper. Choose that ruler tool, and then I can draw my own. I can click and drag with the ruler tool to define my own straight edge as to what I want to rotate from. And then I can go to image and choose image rotation and choose arbitrary, which is going to give me an angle that it calculated based on the ruler in order to rotate that straight edge I set with the ruler to be on a perfect horizontal. So it could be clockwise or counterclockwise. And then I'll just say okay. So it rotated that straight edge to be flat on a horizontal. And then I would take my crop tool and crop in to straighten the image. Or not to straighten the image, but to crop off the unwanted edges. And then when I'm happy with that, I click the check mark. So that's another way to do it. So the first way that I showed you creates a copy out here so that it doesn't mess up the original. But I'll just go with what I did manually and close that and not save it. Okay, so another thing that you want to look out for if you're scanning an image from something that was printed at the printing press, like from a magazine or a book, is that the texture of the image, actually this isn't bad, but some prints will have a texture that you can smooth out with a little Gaussian blur, but actually this one, I'm not really seeing that texture, so this print is probably done a little differently. Okay, what I want to do though is I want to start piecing this together and putting the skater into my moonscape, and then get the wings, give the skater wings, and make him no longer a skater but a flying bat boy. So for people, I like to use the quick select tool. When I'm on the quick select tool, you notice that there's the select subject button that will appear in the control panel, which could give you an easy shortcut, but this might be a little trickier with this image because of these other elements in the image, since this is an advertisement. But if I click select subject, let's see what it does. So it did a pretty good job of selecting around my subject. It also selected around the little Lunchables ad, but that's fine. I can just get rid of the selection around the Lunchables and use my quick select tool like a paintbrush to paint or erase. In this case, I want to erase this selection. So what key do I hold down on? To subtract from selection, I hold down Option, and it takes me to the subtract mode, and then I'm holding the Option key and I can click and drag. So then I'm just going to add to the selection here, and I can use my bracket keys to make my brush smaller and add into the selection here. Oh wait, no, I don't want the skateboard, I forgot. I'm going to zoom in with Command plus, and I'm going to hold Option and erase the skateboard, or erase the selection, or subtract from the selection. Maybe make my brush bigger with the bracket keys and hold Option and erase. And I went too far because I got rid of the selection around his hand. So I'm going to make my brush smaller. I'm going to zoom in with Command plus, use my space bar to move around. And then I can just draw into the hand. I might also try that object, that other new tool that's in this set of selection tools, like the object selection tool. And it's set to enhance edge and object subtract. And so if I were to drag, let's see if I hold down, I want to not do a new selection, but I want to add selection, so I can click the add to selection, and then I can click and drag around his hand here and see if it'll figure out that I want the hand there. There we go. So that's a way to do it. And maybe around here a little bit better. Oh, that didn't figure that out right. Let's see with Lasso. With Lasso, oh, that's doing add. So with Lasso, I'm not sure with Lasso. Let's see with Lasso, if I hold Option, I can toggle into subtract from selection, and let's see if I go around this, draw a circle around this. Oh, that did pretty good to figure out that edge there with the lasso. It's kind of a smart lasso with working with as the object selection tool. But I'm going to go back to quick select and just zoom in and hold space bar to move around, and here I can make my brush a little smaller with the bracket key and hold down Option and subtract a little bit from the selection, add a little bit to the selection, subtract again, add a little bit in there, not holding down any key. Okay, and then little places here that I need to fix up, I can go into check my edges. And I want to get to another technique that you can use that I didn't show you last week, which is going to help a lot with cleaning up your edges, which is using the select and mask dialog. But let me just try to do as good a job as I can out here. Oh, I lost his whole leg. Let me make the brush bigger and then paint down through his leg to get his shoe. Just painting into the shoe and the marching ants are snapping into place, figuring out the edges as I'm drawing into the shape of his shoe or of his figure, his form. I'm gonna hold down Option and subtract again. And if things get a little messy with the quick select, because it's trying to do some guesswork, and sometimes its guesswork isn't so good, sometimes you need to use your own manual abilities do a little bit more manual labor to clean things up. So here I have a little mess here. I could switch into my quick mask mode. And now it's showing everything that is red, or everything that's under the red ruby lith overlay is what is not selected. So I'd have to use my eraser or my paintbrush to edit this. So let me see. Right now, if I paint with the black on top, that's gonna be subtracting from the selection. And maybe I want to use a hard brush, so I'll harden the brush. Maybe not all the way hard, but 93% hard is good. And so now I'm subtracting. I want to add to the selection, so I can paint with white instead. I'll press the X key, so now the white is on top. And now but my opacity's down, so I'm going to bring my opacity up. Now I'm removing that red mask, and as I'm removing it, I'm actually doing this to add to my selection. So this is the more manual way to work. It's not based on a smart tool where Photoshop is analyzing the colors in the image and automatically snapping your selection to the edges. No, you have to use your own eye and your own hand coordination when you're editing this way. But sometimes you just have to force things because Photoshop couldn't figure it out. So you have to go in and fix it up the way you want to fix it up and draw over exactly what you want to draw over. And missed a spot here. And there was something down here that was messy. So here I want to draw with the black on top to paint in more mask. So press X and then I'll paint in more mask here. And then to go back, let me paint more mask here maybe. Okay, so then now I think I've fixed it up, and there's a little bit here that's missing, so I'll add the ruby there, press X and subtract. Okay, I'm gonna zoom out. Okay, so I think that looks good now. So then I click back on the quick mask mode to go edit in standard mode. And now I've adjusted my marching ant selection. But let me get into select and mask. Now I'm on the wrong tool for select and mask. I have to be on a selection tool. So I'll go back to my quick select tool, and then I have the select and mask button up there in the control panel. Any of the tools that are used to draw out marching ants will have the select and mask. So Lasso, Marquee will always have the select and mask up there. Or you can go to select and then choose select and mask from the drop down. But I'm just gonna go ahead and click on select and mask from the control panel. And it takes me over here to inside of the select and mask dialog window. So you see there are less tools on the side now. They're just the select and mask tools. And there's a panel over here on the right that at the top has view modes that we can switch between, and then sliders that allow you to adjust your edges globally all around. So the first one is the onion skin view that lets you adjust the transparency of the background to bring it in or at a certain level or make it completely go away at 100%. Marching ants is just showing you your marching ants. Sometimes you need to go back and check what your marching ants look like after you make changes here in the select and mask. Ruby Lith overlay, just to show you what's not selected, what's masked in other words versus what's selected. and you can view your layer, your selection on a black background or on a white background. And this is helpful to really go in and see where your mistakes are. Let me just Command plus. I can go Command plus and zoom in and move around with space bar. And so on white, I can see some mistakes on the edge of the helmet. Looks a little bit strange and textured, which I want to clean up. And on black is probably what I want to view this on, because my destination image is going to be a dark color. So I want to really look at this image on black. I could also view just a black and white view of this. Let me just Command minus. So I can see what's transparent is black, and what's not transparent or what's opaque is displayed as white here. On layers, just to see the kind of like onion skin, what he'll look like when he's cut out as a separate layer. But with onion skin, it gives you a slider to adjust the opacity of the background. But I'm going to look at this on black, and also you have the slider to bring the original background back or bring up the black, crank the black up all the way. And then I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to use some tools here. So the quick select tool is here still, so I could use the quick select tool if I want to draw this edge in again, smooth, and try that edge again, and I went too far. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and bring that edge back in. Oop. So I'm adding to the selection and subtracting from the selection, using the same tool as before, but this time we're not seeing the marching ants unless we go to view marching ants. Then we can see it affecting marching ants. But this is another way to work that makes it easier to see what you're doing more clearly. This tool, the Refine Edge, is good for if he has like wisps of hair. Let me see if any of his hair is coming out. Oh, there's some wisps of hair that got cut off. So let me bring down the opacity here and use this brush here. The Refine Edge brush can be used to bring out wisps of hair. Let's see. Well, let me try getting that hair first with the quick select and adding a little bit here. Is that where the hair was? Where was the hair? Let me show the background. Oh, I'm going in the wrong place. That's why. So it was here with some hair. And this wasn't hair. Let me just subtract this part again. Okay, and then add some in the hair there. So that is hair, but it doesn't look natural. So Refine Edge is good to paint over something that looks like wisps of hair. That should make it look more natural. But if it's kind of messy looking, you can subtract a little bit away from it. So subtract mode or add mode, and it should kind of make it look more like hair wisps, or you could use it along the edge of the fabric of his clothes to make the fabric look a little softer and not so hard-edged. Make it look more natural. But it's especially good for like fur and wisps of hair. And then there's the brush tool. if you have anything that you need to adjust manually, you can use the brush tool just like I did when I was in quick mask mode to draw in more manually. It's not a smart tool, so it's not gonna be figuring out the edges for you. So you can add to the selection, or you can, if you go too far, you can hold Option and subtract. So removing. So you can always use a combination of these methods. And then, the object selection tool is here. If you want to just draw over an area and have Photoshop figure out the edges. Lasso tool, if you want to use Lasso tool to do more manual selections. But I think I'm done with the tools here. Well, maybe I'll use the paintbrush and flesh this out a little bit cleaner up on the helmet. Because it still looks a little strange there. And then subtract a little bit there to clean up that edge. That edge there. Okay. Okay, so once you adjust your edges and do sort of just a spot check and look at and go to target specific places on your edges, then you're ready to do some overall refining on your edges. So you can, let's see, you can open up, looks like refine. Oh, this is new here. Color aware, object aware. So you can choose your mode so that it's using color as its awareness. If you have lots of different colors, that will be a good option. Like, so this is a color photograph as opposed to a black and white image. Then you would choose object aware, so that Photoshop is just going to analyze the edges differently based on if you choose color aware or object aware. So for an image with less color, I would choose object aware. For an image with more different colors that distinguish the subject from the background, I would choose color aware. But I'm going to leave that closed now. Edge detection, you can adjust the radius to soften the edges and clean up the edges overall. You can check smart radius to see if that helps the edges as well. You can zoom in with Command plus, or use the zoom tool here to zoom in to check your edges as you make those adjustments to the edge with the sliders. You can adjust under global refinements. You can smooth out the edges overall. See, that's really smoothing the edge. But if you go too far, it's gonna mess up the detailing that you did. So if I go back to marching ants, you'll see as I increase the smoothness, I'm kind of messing up the precision of the marching ants that I worked so hard to create. So I would just do like a little smoothness. I'm gonna go back to view on black. And then feather, you can feather the edges to soften your edges, and you don't want to go too far with feather unless you're going for the feathered look. Let me just zoom out here. So that's the feathered look. That could be cool for effect. But look what that feather does to the marching ants. So all that hard work, and I end up with this in my marching ants with too much feathering. So I'll bring down the feather because I want to keep my marching ants precise around the edges of the image, and just have a little bit of feather to soften the edges. So I'll go back to on black and check what my edges look like. So just a little feather. And you could kind of, if you feather a lot, then you could increase the contrast and play with adjusting the feather and the contrast and see how they one works with the other to make the edges look more natural. You can also shift the edge out, and then it's gonna show more of the a little bit of the background around the edge, or shift the edge in a little bit to trim out the background. Or not, I could put it back to 0. And then if you have color along your edge, you might check decontaminate colors, but then if you check decontaminate colors, it takes out your option to output to selection, which is what I want to use right now. Next week I'll talk more about decontaminating colors. For this image, I don't have a background that has a lot of color, like a blue or a green background that would show on the edges, so it doesn't make sense for me to use decontaminate colors for this image. So I'm gonna use my output option, just the top option, to output to the selection, which means these alterations are gonna alter the way the marching ants will affect the pixels in this image, rather than automatically creating a new layer from this, which we'll talk about these other options next week. But I'm gonna just do output to selection and click OK. So it's just altered how the marching ants is gonna affect the boy in this selection. So I'm gonna take, and you don't see any effect take place until you move the image out to another image. So I'm gonna take my move tool and I'm gonna hover over inside of my marching ants and drag this boy to my destination environment image. So I'm gonna drag him up and down and release him there, and he's in the new environment, but there's still parts here that we need to take out, that I'm going to need to take out with cloning. And so I don't want to have the text there, so that's a job for the clone stamp. So I'm going to take my clone stamp and adjust my brush down, and I can hold down the option key and set where I want my target to be. So option click, and then I can start painting, and wherever the plus goes is where it's pulling pixels to draw on top of this. So I can reset at any time if I want this to look more natural. I just keep resetting to different areas that I want to clone from. So wherever the plus is trailing, it's going to be pulling those pixels. And as let's see, I want to take some from here. So I option click, and then I paint, option click, and then I paint, and I keep adjusting. So I want some of his pants to go on this part of the A, so I go option click, and then I make my tool very narrow and then paint in this little area here. Option click a little there, option click a little here to take that out, option click. So you can see this job takes a little bit of time here. I'm gonna just do, and maybe I could do content aware. So I could try content aware. There are some other tools like the healing tools. Let's see. I could try the spot healing brush tool and see if that works. So the way that works is I will paint across something and see if that's gonna help. So I'm just gonna paint from one side to the other. Not so much. I'm gonna undo that. There's also a tool that's called, let's see, the patch tool might work. Let's see if I draw around this and move this out. It will fill with where I moved out to. Let me do that again. So let me just draw a little bit more narrow around this little section here. And then I'm gonna just, so this is the patch tool. It's in the tools that are the healing tools above the clone stamp tool. And I just use it to draw around these letters, and then I'm going to drag from inside of this marching ant selection out to a space that I want to fill in that area. And then I'll try drawing around these letters here and dragging out. Oop, that wasn't too good. Maybe I'll instead, let's see, drag out down here maybe. No. So sometimes the clone stamp is going to be your best bet. So I'm going to just option click and then paint. Then you have more control. Option click to choose where you're painting, where you're drawing pixels from. And wherever the plus is trailing, that's where it's picking up pixels. Option click. I might try my content aware trick too. Let's see. But this little section here I could clean up here with option clicking there, or option clicking here and then drawing a little in there, drawing a little there, option click and paint. Get rid of that. Get rid of this. Zoom out. Let's see what happens if I use my lasso tool and I draw around this, and then I choose to go to edit, and then I choose fill with content aware. Let's see how well it does. Okay, let's see what it does. Hey, it did okay, but not so good. I'm gonna undo that and then do a better job with the clone tool, so that I go option click and then I can paint this stripe in how I want it, and option click here and paint this in. And paint, so then you can do a much more precise job like that and make it look believable. If you need to use cloning, you might have an easier image. Maybe I'll try to find a less challenging image next time. But it's almost done. Option click and then draw. And wherever the plus is, that's where the clone stamp is, or that's what the clone stamp is drawing from those pixels that the plus is trailing on. Okay, looking pretty good. Also need to do the same. I need to extend the shoe here. So there's a shoe texture. Oh, we got something in chat. Cool. Okay, then I'm going to paint more of the shoe in there. Oops, I got in something I don't want, so I'll just option click again and then paint more, just kind of guess where how the bottom of the shoe is gonna be. So I'm just gonna painting to extend the shoe. So option click and then option click, painting. Let's see, a little bit there. And see if it's kind of challenging to, but it will kind of work. Just click, and then I'm gonna get an edge there of the shoe, and I could use some paint too, but that's probably good enough for the shoe. I could do a little bit of painting on the edge and use similar colors from the shoe. So I can take the eyedropper and choose a color there, and then take my paint and choose, maybe adjust the hardness of the brush up a little bit and do a little bit more, oops, some little details if I wanted to bring out the shoe. Maybe use my eyedropper and find this darker color here on the shoe, just to use my imagination a little bit to detail the way the shoe might look. But it's better if I was using the tablet, because now I have to erase a little bit there. My eraser, make my eraser a harder brush, and just to make this look more believable. There, now he looks more like he has the bottom of his shoe there rather than it being cut off. Okay, so now the bat wings. So I'm gonna get some bat wings over here. Maybe I'll just take this wing here, and I could do that with the quick select, or I could do that with my magnetic lasso. I'll try that one. So I'll click, and then I'll just go around the edges and zoom in here, and here I'm just gonna kind of click around here to force it to find its way. I'm clicking to add points and zooming out, and then I'm just gonna, oops, I went down a little bit too much, so I'm gonna press delete, and then just kind of mouse around the edges, and it's automatically finding the edges and planting points. Oops, and then here I'll click, and close my shape there. If I want to, I can use my regular lasso and add to the selection holding shift and redraw that edge and draw around there, clean up that edge, and maybe I need to clean this edge a little bit, so I could go to quick mask mode, use my eraser and erase a little bit of, oh no, not eraser. If I go to paintbrush, I can add to the selection like that, or eraser if I want to subtract from the selection. Then go back out to standard mode, and I've got my selection. So then I can take my move tool and drag this up to my destination image. Drop it in. At this point, I want to save this image. So I'll go File, Save, and save it to my computer and name it my last name followed by my first initial dash proj, P-R-O-J 3. So that's what I'd like you to name this. Save it as a Photoshop document. And I'll put that on in my folder for the class. Teaching from home. Photoshop document, save. Okay. Okay, maybe I want, let me just check the edges a little. There's a little something here that I could erase. Oops, am I on the wrong layer? I'm on the wrong layer, so that's not working. I need to be on the boy layer, and I should be labeling my layers. Boy. And I'm on my eraser tool, and I'm just gonna erase little something there to clean that up there. And then I might want to make this image, might want to make the boy smaller. So I'll hit Command T and scale him down a little bit so he fits better in this image. Maybe I'll rotate him a little bit so he looks more like he's flying. Press return to apply that. Then I've got this bat wing. I'm just gonna call it wing, and I'll put it under, whoops, I double clicked it on accident. I'm gonna put it under him so it goes, so it's behind him, and I can hit Command T and rotate the wing. I could go into edit and then transform and then choose skew maybe, or distort. Let's see what skew does. Skew lets me drag on the corners to change kind of the perspective of the wing. Make it look like it's maybe turned a little bit back. So you can play with skew. Or edit, transform, perspective. You can change the perspective as well with perspective. Or edit, transform, distort. Might give you a little more control. So I kind of just want to make it look like the wing is sort of turned a little bit. Okay, I'll go with that, and then I'll press return. And then I'm going to duplicate this wing with my move tool. I'm just hovering over the wing and holding option and dragging out a duplicate. And then I want to go to, on the wing copy that it created, it's highlighted, so I can go to edit, transform, and flip horizontal. So he has two wings now. Maybe I'll hit Command T and rotate that a little bit differently, and then press return. And then maybe I want the boy to be linked to the wings, so I'll select the boy and the wings and go to link layers so I can just move them around together. I want the boy to have a similar color, the boy and the wings to have a similar color that's kind of a blue haze that would match the background more. So what I want to do that to all of these layers together. So what I'm going to use is an adjustment layer to do that, rather than having to go each layer or having to merge the layers. So there is an option here that you can try out. It's at the bottom of your layer panel, and it's an adjustment layer button. It looks like a half-eaten pizza, like a circle that's half filled in. So when you click on that, it will give you the options that we have under image adjustments, a lot of those same options. It will give you options that you can use to affect layers in a way that we call non-destructive editing. So it's not gonna affect the pixels of the layer directly. It's gonna ride on its own layer over the top and affect all the layers below. So I'm just gonna add from my little circled button, my adjustment layer button, from the bottom of my layers panel, I'm gonna add the color balance adjustment. And it puts it on its own layer. And instead of the color adjustment dialog box that I used when I went to image adjustments, the properties panel will pop up, and I'll be able to use the controls for color balance in the properties panel. So right now it's set to adjust the midtones on every layer below, so I can crank up the blues on the midtones, and then I can go to the highlights and crank up the blues on the highlights, and go to the shadows and crank up the blue on the shadows. But now it's affecting the background too, and I only want it to affect the boy and the wings. So how do I make it only affect the boy and the wings? Well, I will need to select the boy and the wings all together. So I clicked on the boy, shift click down to the bottom of the wings. And then I'm going to put these 3 layers into a group by clicking on the folder button, create new group button. So I click that, and it will combine the boy and the wings all into one little group. I'm going to just double click and name this wing, or I'll call it Bat Boy. And but it's still, the color balance is still affecting everything all the way to the background. If I turn off color balance, you'll see that's the way it looks without it. Turn on color balance, that's affecting all the layers. But I want color balance to only affect the boy and the wings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Photoshop clipping mask. And the way you do that is you hover between the 2 layers, the color balance layer and the Bat Boy group layer, and I'm going to hold the option key and option click the line between the 2. And that's going to put the color balance effect only inside of this Bat Boy layer, which is a group. So now the color balance is only affecting what's inside of the Bat Boy group. So now, and it keeps the background is left alone, because I don't need the background to be any bluer than it already is. So then when I highlight color balance, you'll see I'm affecting the boy and the wings, but not the background. Maybe play with the magenta a little bit. The cyan. Okay, so that's good. Now maybe I want to have a reflection. So I can select Bat Boy here and I can duplicate these layers. Let's see, if I drag the Bat Boy group to the new layer button, let's see if that, okay, so that worked, but it messed up my clipping mask. So I'm going to drag the copy underneath and put it back on the original Bat Boy. So I can make a clipping mask by holding the Option key and Option clicking between the layers, I could also release the clipping mask at any time. This kind of clipping mask is a little different than the clipping mask that we might remember from Illustrator. I can release the clipping mask by Option clicking between the layers as well. That's released, so that color balance is affecting all the layers, including the background, and now I'm just affecting color balance is just going inside of the layer below, the Bat Boy group. And then this other group here, let me just move that. Oh. I'm going to undo that move. Okay, so I want to take it off of auto select now, so that when I select on the Bat Boy copy layer, it makes it so that I'm moving that layer. So that's the one I want to call reflection. Reflection. In fact, I should be able to just merge these down. There's no reason to keep these as separate layers. So let's see if I can do it from the top level of this folder. So I'm just gonna go to my options and see if, okay, merge group. So now it's just flattened out as a flat layer called reflection. It's easier to deal with that way. For this assignment, try to keep your layers separate as much as possible, but if you do need to merge down a layer here and there, that's fine. But you don't want to turn in a flattened out image to me, because then I can't see what you did in your work. Okay, so then for the reflection, I want to turn it upside down, so I can go edit and transform. I can flip vertical. I can go edit and I can play with I can distort it, but before I distort it, I'm going to try using a blending mode on it from my layers panel. Like linear burn could be good for this reflection. Yeah, that kind of matches the other reflections on the water. And then I can hit Command. No, I'm not going to do Command T. I'm going to do Edit and Transform, and then I'm going to do Distort and just kind of distort it so that it looks sort of like a flat sort of reflection on the water. You can see it better. Make it look sort of flat. So this is kind of similar to what you might do to make a shadow as well. But this is a reflection on the water. Okay, so I'm going to press return to apply that. I can move my reflection around. I can move the Bat Boy around where I want him to be. And that's where I'll leave off today. And then I'll teach you some time-saving techniques to selecting more detailed imagery next week, and show you a little bit more about non-destructive editing and using layer masks and vector masks we'll look at for next week. So thanks everyone. You are a trooper.